Hey guys, Rebel Engine 95, recording live from the Low County Prison Cell. So here's another fight I got for this week. I'm actually doing it sort of early in the night, so that's a good sign, I guess. And this was born essentially out of a necessity to get one of these characters in a fight. This is Hunter from Owl House versus Peridot from Steven Universe. I really liked Hunter as a character. I thought he was really super interesting how they built him up. So I was kind of looking for a really good character for that, and I'd heard this one and didn't think that much of it, and now I'm kind of looking back at it realizing how good it is. So let's just get it started here. So Hunter is we were first introduced to him as the Golden Guard, as kind of like the right-hand man to Belos, sort of like an adopted son almost of Belos. And we're introduced to him and we find out that he doesn't have any magic of his own. He has to use what's referred to as artificial magic from a staff, right? And he's kind of like Belos' loyal attack dog, carries out his commands. And down the line, we start to learn just a little bit more of him. He starts kind of appreciating the main characters and their efforts and all that. We find out he's not such a bad guy. Then we find out that he's essentially, I don't know if clone is the right word, but he's essentially he was essentially an artificial person created for Belos for this purpose, to just carry out Belos' orders, and that he's not the first one, and that the ones before him who disobeyed Belos ended up mysteriously meeting their end. Armed with this information, Hunter kind of switches sides and becomes a good guy. He even gets his own talisman, which is like a wooden, it's like an animal made out of wood that is like sentient, and forms the head of their brooms, wands, I don't know, staffs, whatever they call them. He's being named Flapjack. And he becomes sort of like the guy with the troubled past, I guess. Now, like I mentioned, a lot of his powers go through some changes. So if we're taking Death Battle standards into account here, you kind of give him access to all of his power set, or his power set at his peak, I guess you would say. Artificial magic, probably not, just because there's like a negative connotation to it, even though that was technically, I guess, his most powerful. But when he loses his staff that lets him use artificial magic, he gains the ability to basically communicate with and use the magic of talismans, any talisman. And they all have different abilities. He'd been able to use things like earth magic. He'd been able to fly, teleport, shoot energy, as well as he even learned natural magic, which would be instead of internalized magical power, it would be a magic that like just is of nature itself, which involves using runes to invoke certain elements. I think he's used the ones for ice and plants before. No, it wouldn't be plants, because Willow does plants. It was ice and something else. Can't remember. But in all of these ability, also the last kind of power change he had was that when his talisman Flapjack died, somehow its power got transferred into him. So he ended up just with the innate ability to teleport like at will. Yeah, and he uses all of these abilities to a very good degree. He is a very good combatant, very skilled, has taken on characters like Luce and Amity, and has, he's no stranger to combat. Because he was the Golden Guard, he was part of Belos's guard, he was able to act, he was likely trained pretty much his entire life. Yeah, but the cool thing about him is sort of like the troubled past, the having done, realizing that your life is a lie and that you've been led down the wrong path and you've done these things, and coming to terms and discovering yourself, and it's a really cool story for his character. And a character with a similar story, funnily enough, is Peridot, who we find out Peridot is a kind of like a scout for the diamonds, and she is there to kind of evaluate Earth for its potential as a, to be invaded by the gem homeworld. And in that attempt, she meets Steven and the gems, and though she fights with them at first, she realizes, this planet has a lot to offer that isn't just making it a giant rock that we can use, right? It's there's more here. And she ends up turning on the gem homeworld. Peridot, despite being thousands of years old, isn't really one for combat. She is more of a, I wouldn't even say tactician. She is an inventor. She has a brilliant engineering mind, and she usually uses when she started, she uses robotic attachments that let her fly and shoot energy blasts and whatnot. But then later, after inhabiting Earth, she finds out that due to her, whether it's properties of her gem being on Earth, or if it's properties of maybe the Earth environment, that she actually has ferrokinesis, or the ability to manipulate metal. Now, it's not like a Magneto degree where she can like pull iron out of the air, but she can, make metal float around and do things, and this, combined with her engineering mind, has let her create weapons and whatnot very, very quickly. She's created mechs. She's I think she might have recreated those arm blasters or rocket, at one point. But she's, and doing this, she's pretty capable in combat, when she does have weapons like this. But the other thing to consider is she is a gem. So that means that her body is essentially just made of hard light. It's a projection of the gem's consciousness. The gem is her, right? And if that body would be destroyed, the gem would allow her to regenerate. This takes usually like days sometimes, but the only way for her to be killed is for her to be for her gem to be shattered. But it is worth noting that gems have been contained in energy fields, probably ones that prevent the release of light, and they're unable to reform in that space. So, how do I think a fight between these two would go? Well, without a doubt, Hunter definitely has the more combat experience. Like I said, Peridot is thousands of years old, but she doesn't really fight. She was only armed in her takeover of Earth for, like, defense purposes, basically. But you can't discount the, like I said, manipulation of metal and the, like this is really like a science versus magic fight, because we have the one character that's creating like sci-fi weaponry, and then we have another character who is literally using magic. That being said, that's where I think this fight is kind of determined. Because Peridot, A, isn't going to be able to immediately understand anything that Hunter's doing, like how he's able to use his magic. She'd probably look at his teleportation as like, assuming that he's a gem and his body's made of light or something and he can move around that way. Right? And Hunter doesn't really have much metal on him to manipulate. And in fact, he's using like wood as a as a thing for his staffs and whatnot. So, this is not. She wouldn't. Peridot wouldn't be able to like really. Her brilliant, her analytic mind and her engineering mind is like her big strength. Hunter can work around that by using magic that she won't be able to account for. Right? And also, it's the fact that Hunter's using natural magic, right? So he can pretty much spout elements from nothingness. Whereas Peridot, ferrokinesis is very powerful, don't get me wrong, but she's limited to the metal around her environment, right? She'd be limited to using whatever's there. Again, this isn't like Magneto, where he's like forming metal underground and like ripping it from the earth or something, like, or he's creating volcanic eruptions. Like, this is, she can really just move metal around and like shape it and whatnot. So without like an endless supply of metal, Hunter can pretty much just keep attacking her without having to worry about it. And not to mention, like, yeah, she has created these giant mechs and sci-fi weapons and stuff, but it's not like instantaneous. She does have to take some time to make these things. She made a giant mech in like a day, right? I mean, in the fight, they'd probably give her access to it, but, and yeah, and it's, like I said, it's also the fact that Hunter has just, he's pretty much been fighting his entire life, whereas Peridot, in fact, Peridot not only doesn't fight, she actively avoids fighting, and it's not like out of pacifism, it's about, like, she knows that she can't really fight anybody. Yeah, so my, these two have a lot in common, character-wise. They're both these characters that switch sides and realize that they're fighting for the wrong side, and they, that the thing they were fighting against was actually, beautiful and worth saving. Like Hunter wanting to use natural using wild magic because he realizes that it's not corrupted and it's worth keeping around, and Peridot realizing that Earth has value and it's not just a place to be destroyed by the homeworld. Yeah, I mean, they're both very similar characters, and I think this is a great matchup. But no, I think it's pretty clear that it's gonna be Hunter. Now that I say this, I mean, like, maybe I could have done like Hunter versus Emerald or something, but this is not a squash, by the way. I'm making it sound like it's a squash and that it's not an interesting fight. It is. It's just you have to kind of like take the layout of Death Battle and apply it to it to make it seem cool. Because again, Peridot normally is not a fighting character, so you wouldn't necessarily think that much of her. But yeah, cool. I think this is pretty cool and this is worth doing. But anyway, Verbal Engine 95, see ya.